I was at home in Dusseldorf getting ready for my very first dinner party at a German friend's house when Yvonne tells me,
"Hey, we have to go soon. We still have to buy the flowers."
I'm like, what flowers?
Well, the ones for dinner.
That night, I learned 12 things that I'd like to share with you about going to a German's house for dinner. Hey, my name is Jen and I'm from Guatemala.
And mine is Yvonne and I'm German.
And together we're from simplegermany.com, where we create content to empower internationals to settle into life in Germany more smoothly. Number 1 is, what do you bring to a German dinner party?
Which answers the question, yes, you should bring something, especially if it's your first time at that house or with that friend, colleague, guest, whatever. I mean, not guest, host, whatever it is. And as we mentioned in the intro, flowers are an option. However, not always the best idea. It depends a little bit on your relationship with the dinner host. For example, if you are a man and the dinner host is maybe your German female supervisor, flowers could be a little bit misleading. Could be, don't have to be, it really depends.
Yes, but if you do decide to bring flowers because you feel comfortable and you have the feeling that it's a good idea, you can buy them pretty much anywhere. It doesn't have to be a massive bouquet that costs 100 euros. It can be some tulips that you buy, for example, in Aldi or Rewe, or even you go to a flower shop that you can create a little bouquet for maybe 5-10 euros. Evan is going like this.
Yeah, because I wouldn't get like this plastic wrap where it clearly says like $1.99 from Penny or something.
You can buy it and take the price off.
Let's just say the flowers should have a range maybe from 5 to 10 euros.
Yeah, okay. German says it, then we believe it.
It's just giving you a little bit of a feeling.
Yes, I understand. Yeah. Okay. Now, if flowers is definitely not a thing that you want to get. Oh, another important thing before we move on from the flowers is whatever you do, don't bring red roses. It is
or white roses.
Or white roses. I would say roses in general, stay away from them because they can be interpreted as different things.
Now, if the bouquet is like all colorful and has different types of flowers and there's one pink rose in it, that's fine.
That is fine, yes. But don't bring like a 12,
purely
like a dozen
roses.
of red roses.
Yeah,
exactly, yeah. Now, if flowers is not your thing, then of course you can move on to another thing, which is wine.
A bottle of wine, yeah.
Yes, that's true. A barrel of wine. However, for wine, I would say it's also highly dependent in two things. First of all, if your host drinks alcohol, and second of all, if your host enjoys wine.
Well, and also if your culture allows alcohol, right?
That is also
because
true.
If you're uncomfortable with it, why would you bring it?
Yes, which leads to option number 3, which is probably one of my favorite ones, and is to bring chocolates.
Exactly. However, chocolates, we mean more like pralines, something a little bit more fancy, not just a Milka bar. And with pralines, it could also be a Milka praline pack, like the little hearts and stuff, just something a little bit more
special,
living up to the occasion and not just the everyday bar. And what's also quite common in Germany, there is this brand, the branded chocolates called Merci, which in French means thank you. That is a very nice thing to bring and quite common in Germany as a little attentiveness gift. Thank you.
Yes, and such a merci you can buy in any supermarket. Also here, for example, close to where we live, there's a chocolaterie, and there obviously they do handmade chocolates and they do boxes of 6, 12 and whatnot, and that is something very special that you can bring.
That is even more special, yeah.
Yeah, that's like another level, yeah. So what if you don't like any of that stuff? Then of course you can always bring something from your own culture. However, here I would refrain from bringing, let's say, maybe a big souvenir or a big element that cannot be consumed. If so, maybe something food related might be a good idea, like a sweet from your country or something like that if you have some laying around.
Not a whole meal.
Exactly, not a whole meal. That's another thing. Yeah, something small to be consumed later by the host and not during dinner.
At the end of the day, bringing something shows your appreciation of the invitation and the appreciation of the host taking the time to prepare dinner for you.
Exactly. Now, number 2 is to be on time.
We have mentioned this, I would say, in multiple videos on this channel before. However, here we would like to emphasize the being on time really means on time. Like, please don't, but I would not expect you to be 15 minutes before the invited dinner time. Let's say the invitation is at 6 or at 7. It is perfectly fine to be there a few minutes, like maximum 5 minutes early, or really right on time. We often like ring the doorbell at our friends and we said 7, it's like, wow, it's 7, ching. So that is totally fine. If you expect to be a little bit late due to a late tram or whatsoever, that's fine as long as you inform the host in advance. Even if it's just 5 minutes, just let them know, hey, I'll be running 5 minutes late, see you soon.
Yes, that is a very good point, a very important and polite thing to do. Definitely make everything possible to be on time. Number 3 is how to deal with the doorbell situation. So tip number 1 is you should ask your host what is their last name, because here in Germany, the way you ask or you ring the doorbell is by the name. So sometimes it happens that maybe they have a different name on the doorbell, or it's a WG and it's shared with other people. So just make sure to clarify that. So you will ring the doorbell, and then if the building has a loudspeaker, then they will probably indicate you what floor you have to go to. If not, they will just open the door. And the rule here is just keep on walking until you find an open door.
Exactly.
And that, for me, has always been a bit tricky, because sometimes I find myself going up and down a few times, like, wait, was it here? Was it there? I can't find anything. Sometimes the host is outside waiting for you, or...
That would be the ideal case, yeah.
That would be the super ideal
That's
case.
how I would handle it.
Yeah. But other times they might be cooking and someone else might be doing something, so they just leave the door a little bit open. So it's kind of awkward always to open the door and be like, hello? But anyways, that's a few tips for you right there. Number 4, it is very appreciated if you ask if you should take your shoes off.
Once you enter the apartment.
Right.
So
Yes.
most of German households don't wear their street shoes in their own home. So there's a typical house shoe, whether that is a Birkenstock or another slipper or an Adilette or whatsoever, usually some sort of slipper. Now for when the Germans invite guests for dinner, there might be exceptions made that for dinner, the guests leave their shoes on. That depends a little bit on the weather outside. If it's a really rainy day, I would not like that as a German host. If it's a summer's day and all is clean and dry, maybe that's totally fine. So just ask, should I take my shoes off or not? And you will get an answer, and then it's nice if you follow that.
Yes, for example, as an example, in our home, usually we ask guests to take their shoes off always.
So also an indication that maybe you wear socks without holes.
Yeah, so that's a very good point. Wear clean socks also, please, right? Fair point, fair point. Number 5 is be prepared. Be prepared for what? Well, this is a very also cultural thing in Germany, that when you are invited for dinner, dinner will start shortly after you arrive, or all the guests have arrived.
Correct.
Which, if every German guest is on time, as we have said, then it will happen shortly after the time that you were invited for dinner. This means that if you were invited at 7, maybe 7:15, 20-ish, you would be sitting at the table already eating.
Or even earlier.
Earlier.
That also means that you should be hungry when you arrive, and not think that dinner might only be served in 2 hours. That really the dinner party, dinner party is not really the way we would frame it, but that's the English word, starts with food, really.
Yeah, it's very rare. I would say I have never experienced that you arrive to the house, you talk for an hour or two, then only then dinner starts being prepared, and then like the evening.
But that
continues.
goes back to the dinner times that we mentioned in our video about meal times in Germany, that dinner is usually eaten at 6 or 7. So if that's the invitation, that means that's mealtime. And then the Quatschstunde, like the talk, happens afterwards, which we will get into later also.
Yes. Number 6 is, what do people drink?
So usually the first thing that you're being asked is if you'd like some water. And it's usually okay to say yes. If in Jen's case you prefer still water, you would probably emphasize.
Yes, I would say, ja danke, stilles Wasser bitte.
And then they'd say, Leitungswasser, okay? Like the tap water, all right?
Ja. And then my answer as a good German is, ja.
Exactly. But beyond that, usually also when... So pretty much if a German asks you, would you like some water? That's clear. But if a German asks you, what would you like to drink? They don't refer to water. They refer to any other drink. Often, not always, an alcoholic drink. So alcohol is quite common in German households, not everywhere, but in
the majority, I would say.
At least what in our circle of friends, let's put it that way. There are different circles. Then you could start with a beer. You can also say, I'll have what you have, so whatever, you follow the host. But beer or wine are quite common at dinner parties, especially before you start eating or while you're eating.
Yes, and that leads to, there's of course non-alcoholic options. If the host is a good host, I would say they would have other non-alcoholic beverages besides water. And this could be anything like soft drinks, or Apfelschorle is a very popular one.
Or a beer mix.
Or a beer mix or something like that. And very important is that if you are driving a car and you are at this dinner party, it is okay to have one beer or one glass of wine, but no more. It is very frowned upon in Germany to drink and drive. I know from other cultures, I've actually seen it in the US as well, in Guatemala, that you get invited for dinner and people drink like 3 beers or 4, and then they get into their car and drive. That is a big no-no here in Germany. And no one, I would say also culturally, it's very accepted to
Respect.
Respect, yeah, it's very respected when you say, no, I'm driving. So, for example, if you drink a beer and then you're a driver, then you can just say, I'll stay with anything other option because I'm the driver, and people will be like, oh, okay, cool. Not this pressure, like, come on, drink more, another beer, or something like that.
That might happen, but not if you're the driver.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. That's what I wanted to say. And another important thing about drinks is that, don't worry, again, if this really relies a little bit on if the host is this kind, like a good host or not, I would say. But generally speaking, your drinks get refilled automatically. You don't have to ask for more at the table because Germans tend to be really good hosts, and they tend to ask, okay, now that your drink is over, what else would you like to drink? A refill or something else?
Cool.
So don't worry about the refills, I would say. Number 7 is look into the eyes when saying cheers.
Yes, we've discussed this topic also in multiple other videos. It goes back to like the king's days, medieval ages, of kind of like showing trust and that you won't get poisoned when you look each other in the eye and cheering. So that is a very big tradition. And usually you cheer once, multiple times, but the first time is a very important time, which happens before you start eating. So usually dishes are served, plates are served, food is on the table, and then before you start, everyone raises their glass and says cheers. Maybe the host says, oh, thanks for coming, or you say thanks for the invitation, and then you cheer, look into the person into the eyes, and then you can start eating.
Yes, and this goes to the next point, and that is you only eat when the food is at the table for everyone.
Correct, yes. You would never start eating if, let's say, usually as a host, I would always place the plate. If I serve plates, sometimes I prepare the plates in the kitchen and then carry them over to the table individually. And I would always place the first plate to the guest. Sometimes, no, to the guest. Sometimes the food is in the middle of the table because it's kind of like a self-serve meal or whatsoever. And then I would still serve the guest first. But don't start eating if your plate is full and the others are not.
Yes, and another indication besides the cheers that happens to start, let's say, the meal, is that you will hear a few words maybe. So one of them could be guten Appetit, which is good appetite. The other one, which is the more colloquial one, is Mahlzeit.
Which at dinner I wouldn't say that. That's
I've
more like for lunch.
heard it multiple times. And the other one is
Lasst es euch schmecken, bon appétit, also in the French way, anything like that, yeah.
Yeah, so when you hear that in the cheers, you know, okay, everyone's ready for eating, then you can proceed to start eating the delicious food. Number 9 is cutlery. In Germany, the majority of meals are eaten with, I would say, I don't know the name really, but I would call them Western cutlery, unless you're eating Asian food. Then
knife, fork, and spoon.
Yeah, knife, fork, and spoon, unless sometimes when eating Asian food, there might be chopsticks, but I have learned that Germans really eat everything with knife and fork. I was going to say spoon. That would have been really weird. Meaning that also if a burger is served, usually people eat. But I would say, what I wanted to say with this is that when you're invited to a German house, rarely would they probably give you finger food, that you use your fingers to eat. It's generally more to eat with cutlery.
In most occasions, yes. Yeah.
In most occasions. And here comes the fun part, because when you see the table place, you will have an idea of how many courses you will have and what kind of meal this is. So for example, if there's a plate and then there's 2 forks and 2 knives and a spoon at the top, you are in luck, because that means there will be an appetizer, an entrée, and then there will be a main course, and the most important one, the spoon at the top, indicates that there will be dessert. I love dessert. So when I see that, I'm like, yes, this is a very good dinner.
However, it's not the norm that at every German dinner party in that sense, there is 3 courses. Absolutely not. Maybe 2, maybe an appetizer or a dessert, but not necessarily 3. Maybe sometimes 4. It really highly depends on the host and whether the host appreciates the cook or not. But in case there are several cutleries next to your table, we eat or you use a cutlery from the outside in. So whatever's outside first, you take for the first course, then the next and the dessert, like Jen mentioned, or the fork, whatever is on top. The little ones are for dessert.
Yeah, so spoon usually means something like you eat like a mousse or something like that, and a little fork usually means like a delicious cake.
Or something else.
Or something else. I think I want dessert at this moment. But anyways, when you're done eating, 2 things. First of all, if you clean your plate, that is a very good indication to the host that you enjoyed the food. It's very rare, I would say, that Germans leave things on the plate. And when they do, that is an indication they didn't really enjoy it so much. And number 2 is that when you're done eating, and if you have different cutleries, then you put your cutlery on top of the plate.
Yes, and usually you put the knife into the fork and have a certain angle. I'm not sure it's like this restaurant etiquette, but we'll show you here. And a certain angle, that means you are done and you enjoyed it.
Yes. Now, also another tip is if you see different cutleries, then you have an idea of how much food you could possibly eat. Let's say you have an appetizer and then there's the main meal, and you see there's a little fork or spoon for the dessert. And for the main meal, the host asks you, do you want repetition? Then it's up to you to know.
Not always, but sometimes.
If they ask, right? Yeah. Then you know, oh, okay, maybe I need a little bit of space for dessert and whatnot. So you can also estimate how much you can actually eat of each meal if there's more than one meal. But like Yvonne said, it doesn't always happen. When it does, jackpot. Number 10 is actually what I thought was an Yvonne thing, but it turns out to be a German thing. And that is to put your inactive hand on top of the table at all times.
Which, since we are both right-handed, it's the left hand, but vice versa, right? Yes, it is a very big thing in Germany that you have both hands visible on the table. And this is how we got raised. Like if as a kid you forget your hand auf den Tisch, like hand on the table. Because for us, it's very impolite to have the hand below the table. First of all, for me, it's kind of like usually then you kind of like...
Your posture is different.
Posture is different, exactly. And I don't know where it goes back to, but from what I know, remember, think is more like you don't know what you're doing with your hand under the table, and it could be anything but appreciative of eating.
So this goes mainly when eating a soup, for example. That's when we first had this, because I was eating the soup and I had my hand on my lap. Mind you, I wasn't doing anything weird with it. And Yvonne's like, put your hand on the table. I'm like, okay. And then 3 spoons later, my hand on my lap, put the hand on, and then it became like a thing. I'm like, why is it so important? And then doing research.
It's just our culture.
Yeah. And doing research for this video, I realized it's not just an Yvonne thing, it's actually a German thing. So it's super interesting.
I would not even just only say German. It's probably in other countries as well. Let us know.
Let us know, please, because in Guatemala, I don't think that's a thing at all. Anyways, continuing. Number 11 is don't leave after the meal is over.
Correct. As we mentioned earlier, actually after you're done eating, that's when in Germany kind of like the dinner party starts. The conversation, not necessarily dance per se,
true.
but conversation happens. That's actually a valuable part of bonding, of getting to know the other people that are at the table. And usually you stay at the table. The host will, and you can help the host to clean the table, bring the plates to the kitchen, and then you go back to the table, sit down, enjoy more drinks, water, whatever, and have conversation. This is like the valuable, most important part of actually the entire dinner invitation.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's when, like you say, the whole thing kicks off. And if there's a dessert, I'm focused on dessert, I don't know why. If there's a dessert, usually when the plates are, the table is clean, then you talk for, I would say, 30 minutes or so, and then dessert comes. It's not like an immediate thing. This just means, this is just to point out that you stay at the table to have conversations and get to know each other, and that's where the action happens.
Exactly, yeah, and you leave whenever it's time for you to go to bed, whenever you see some sign of someone is getting tired.
Yeah.
Or when it's just really so for us, we usually leave 10:30-ish latest, because that's then our time to go to bed.
Yeah, it highly depends also on the engagement of the conversation.
Absolutely.
And the day of the week and how things are. If there's a very high energy, we usually stay also until midnight or stuff. Yeah.
True, yeah, but just to give you an idea also, when is the right time to leave? It depends on the energy, but usually when it's fine for you, not too early. If dinner's at 7, don't leave like at 8:30.
Yeah, that would be super early. Yeah.
Unless, of course, you have kids at home and the babysitter's leaving. There's always exceptions to the rule. But at the end of the day, you should show appreciation for the host and also offer them your time.
Yes, agreed. And number 12 is at the end of it all, of the whole dinner, meal, eating, you will be asked if you want an Absacker or a coffee.
Well, but that usually happens after eating, right? Not after the chit-chat.
Yes, that's what I mean. But after the whole meal, I mean like the meal and dessert.
Yeah, okay, after dessert. Yes,
yeah,
correct. Yeah, after dessert. And what is Absacker?
So Absacker is any kind of alcoholic drink. It's like a schnapps. I hope that's an English word.
It could be a grappa. It could be some sort of other. The official word is digestive.
Digestive, maybe.
No, digestive.
It could be. It could be a Jägermeister also.
No.
True, it can. You can also have a Killepitch, which is a very Dusseldorf thing. But Ivan is looking at it. But anyways, it's usually like a grappa or palinka from Hungary. I remember it could also be a thing. It's a very hard alcohol shot that you take. And usually you don't just like drink it at once.
The cuppa you would never take as a shot.
Yeah, you actually sip on it. So again, if you're a driver, your response to this is no. If you like stronger alcohol and you would like a digestif, as Yvonne mentions, then of course the answer you can enjoy it. Also, usually German hosts offer coffee, and this could be an espresso or a cappuccino, and that is up to you to your liking if you want coffee in the evening or not. If you're curious on how to make German friends so you get invited to a dinner party, then make sure to check out our video that's showing here to the left. Until next time, cheers!